You must be seeing the screen now. So I'll be starting. Okay, so we'll be starting with a case witness to understand what is status epilepticus. So I have made a hypothetical scenario: a 2-year boy with fever for 6 days and with 10 to 12 episodes of multifocal tonic-clonic seizures with altered sensorium from last 4 to 5 hours, and each seizure lasted for more than 20 minutes. So he is an altered sensorium and he was seizuring from last 4 to 5 hours, and there were 10 to 12 episodes. So he came convulsive to toilet casualty, no pallor, icterus, petechia, rash, liver span of 7 centimeters was there, and spleen not palpable. BTRs were brisk in all the 4 limbs, and bilateral plantars were extensor. Pupils were bilaterally 3 millimeter reacting to light. So we'll be coming to evolving definition of status epilepticus. So if we say that what is there in this slide, this slide.
Lokesh, please be loud. We can't hear you. Lokesh, please be
Which
loud.
makes it a status epilepticus is the presence of altered sensorium in it. So child was having repeated seizures, but he was simultaneously having altered sensorium in between the seizures. So that makes it uh, uh, it makes it uh, defines it to be a case of status epilepticus. So coming to definition of status epilepticus, so what is changing in the definition is duration of status epilepticus. So from 1981 to current to 2020, so what is changing is the duration is keep changing. So first in 1981 they defined it as to be continuous seizure activity lasting for 60 minutes, and then in 1993 they made it to 30 minutes, and by 1993 again one seminal paper came from American Epilepsy Society, and they told that the duration should be 10 minutes, and Lowenstein in his landmark paper, which was published in NEJM in 1999, they made this duration to be of 5 minutes. So currently used terminology by like what we're using right now is from ILAE, International League Against Epilepsy, which how it defines status is a condition resulting either from the failure of the mechanisms responsible for seizure termination or from the initiation of mechanisms which lead to abnormally prolonged seizures. So after time point t1, so and there are two concepts of time point t1, and there is another point is time point t2. So what is time point t2? So it is a condition which can have long-term consequences, including neuronal death, neuronal injury, and alteration of neuronal networks, depending on the type and duration of seizure. So understand it clearly. So time point t1 is the time when treatment should be started, and time point t2 is the time, it marks the time at which neuronal damage or self-perpetuating alteration of neuronal networks begin. So understanding them clearly, so for every seizure type, they have defined this time point T1 and T2 differently, because a child who is having generalized seizures is not the same as the child who is having absence status epilepticus, right? So status epilepticus happening in generalized. Uh, Wait a second. Okay. 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 So can you hear me? Just raise your hand if you can hear me right now. Okay. So I'll I'll be continuing my uh, talk. So time point T1 and T2, they are different for every type of seizure. Not all seizures are same. So time point T1 and T2 is different for generalized seizure, focal seizures, absence seizure, and that way for every type of seizure it has been defined. So time point T1 for generalized seizure is 5 minutes, and time point T2 for the same is 30 minutes, and focal status epilepticus time point T1 is 10 minutes, and for time point T2 is 60 minutes. For absence seizures it is 10 to 15 minutes, and T2 is unknown. So what are these time points? Time point T1 is after which the seizure is unlikely to stop, and time point T2 is after which there is neuronal injury definitely will happen in this type of seizure. So for generalized seizure, it is the shortest, both the durations T1 and T2. For focal status epilepticus, which can happen in epilepsies like Rasmussen's encephalitis, or maybe in NCC also, in acute symptomatic seizures, you can have a focal status epilepticus. Absence status epilepticus, this is a very rare scenario, but you can have this in certain type of scenarios, like if a child with absence epilepsy has been given a sodium channel blocker like phenytoin or carbamazepine. So if you prescribe carbamazepine or phenytoin to a child with absence epilepsy, they can go in absence status epilepticus. And for this type of status epilepticus, time point T2 is not defined because this is such a rare scenario. So they have not defined this time point T2 after that which the neuronal injury happens in absence status epilepticus. So what is the classification? So you can classify status epilepticus by two different ways. So first is by the just the clinical classification with prominent motor symptoms, and second is without prominent motor symptoms. So with prominent motor symptoms, convulsive status epilepticus, myoclonic status epilepticus, and focal motor type of seizures, and tonic status. So for each type, I will tell you an example. This convulsive status epilepticus, generalized convulsive. So it is the most common scenario, generalized GPCS, which you are having a repeat, even in febrile status or any symptomatic seizures. It is the most common scenario. Myoclonic status epilepticus with coma, without coma. So with coma, you can have in epilepsies like PME phenotype, like SSP, they can present with myoclonic status epilepticus or NCL children. Without coma is a rarity, but you can have this type of status epilepticus in syndromes like Angelman. Angelman syndrome children can have myoclonic status epilepticus. So again, focal motor, coming to focal motor status epilepticus. So this type of seizures are which you can see commonly in the acute, like any focal pathology like NCC in our Indian scenario, or maybe Rasmussen's encephalitis, where the seizures will be present in form of epilepsia partialis continua. Okay. Then without prominent motor symptoms, so non-convulsive status epilepticus comprises of this broadly of this entity. And other classification which we deal in status is etiological classification. So in etiological classification, there can be known factors and unknown factors. In known factors, most common is acute symptomatic. So acute symptomatic comprises the most. So which we also see like in child with encephalitis, intoxication, stroke, dyselectrolytemia, post-traumatic seizures, or post-encephalitic seizures, or having any IEM presenting as a status epilepticus. And other in remote symptomatic epilepsy, they can present with a status epilepticus, like the injury has happened in the past, like a hypoglycemic brain injury which has happened at birth, but the child is presenting to you at 2 years first time with status epilepticus. So this type of scenarios can happen remote. So this comes under this category of remote symptomatic epilepsy. Then progressive epilepsies, like a Rasmussen's child, which is like initially they have intermittent focal seizures, and then they can go into focal status epilepticus or epilepsia partialis continua, and status epilepticus in defined electroclinical syndromes. So the example for this is a child with Dravet syndrome or Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. So they are part of a defined electroclinical syndrome, and they can present sometimes in status epilepticus. And then this category, which is a rarity, but you can find these children once in a while, like in form of fires or NORS. So this type of children, autoimmune epilepsy, so unknown. So we don't know the etiology initially, and we are dealing with it. So what turns seizure into status epilepticus? What is the pathophysiology behind this? So what you have to understand is this: there is a dysregulation in neurotransmitters. So what happens is, so there are some stages: stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. So as the duration prolongs, the mechanisms keep changing. So initially, in the initial stages, which comprises of around in seconds to minutes. So what happens is protein phosphorylates and ion channel. There is ion channel opening and closing occurs, and neurotransmitters get released. So what you have to understand to what is the basic thing which you should understand is, all excitatory neurotransmitters gets increased and inhibitory neurotransmitters gets decreased in the process of seizure turning into status epilepticus. And all the excitatory receptors also express more, and inhibitory receptors decreases on the surface. So excitatory transmitters like glutamate increases, GABA decreases, then increase in excitatory receptors like NMDA receptors increases, and AMPA receptors also increases. And then further there will be excitatory substance like P, there will be increase, and inhibitory neuropeptide Y will decrease. So it's very simple: all excitatory substance will increase and inhibitory substances keep getting depleted, and which turns into the seizure into a vicious cycle of status epilepticus. And what will be the systemic manifestations? So you can easily understand this by two simple things. So initially, during early status epilepticus, compensatory mechanisms occurs in body. They're in form of sympathetic overactivity. So body will try to prevent all the organs from the effects of status epilepticus, which is ongoing. And late status epilepticus is marked by failure of all these compensatory mechanisms. So after sympathetic overactivity occurs, there will be fatigue, and there will be all the organs features of organ shutdowns. So what we can understand is that during early status epilepticus, autonomic and metabolic changes due to increased catecholamine occurs, tachycardia, hypertension, increased CVP, hyperglycemia. So all sympathetic features will occur. And in the second stage, in the late stage, compensatory reserves gets exhausted, hyperthermia, and then there will be hypotension, hypoglycemia, cerebral autoregulation is lost, rhabdomyolysis due to ongoing status, and hyperkalemia ensures, and eventually they go in hypoxia and hypercarbia. So coming to management goals are immediate stabilization, where ABC is priority always in any type of emergency in pediatrics or in adults. Airway, breathing, circulation is the priority. Termination of seizures at the earliest. For termination of seizure, we will discuss pharmacotherapy, and then we also want to do neuroprotection. And how will we achieve this? By prevent recurrences of seizure in the hospital, identify precipitating factors such as hypoglycemia, electrolyte imbalances, infection control, and fever control. And evaluation and treatment of the underlying cause should be the ongoing process, which you start as soon as the child comes. So you start finding what could be the cause of this seizure. Is there any specific treatment to this? And protocolized management, if you have, it will always have better outcomes. So you cannot think when a child is in status, okay, which drug to use. So there should be a set protocol at your hospital level, or you may follow any associations protocol. So there are so many associations, you can follow any protocol, but always it is better if you use a protocolized management. So coming to stabilization, so the airway, breathing, circulation, as we discussed, blood sugar, IV cannulation, sampling, and then treat the precipitating factors, which is the ongoing process, and then focus, history, and examination, which is a side by side process which you need to start. So first thing which you can do as the child has come to you conversing, so there's a recovery position, left lateral position you can help the child with. And side the history, which is the like you'll be starting management, but what history point should be focusing on is you will be asking parents about loss of consciousness during the episode, memory of event, it was a focal or generalized, abnormal eye movements if any, or any provocation factor was there like sleep deprivation or intercurrent illness, or any past history of trauma, fever, birth insult, developmental delay, family history of seizures or febrile seizures, because this will help you to choose the drugs. Like a child with febrile seizures in febrile seizures and already is receiving some drugs, or maybe not receiving, only clobazam prophylaxis, so you may load directly that child with valproate. Or if a child with Dravet syndrome, you will not choose Eptoin to load, you may choose to load with valproate only. So this type of things you will get when you take the history. So it is always important to ask history simultaneously when you are managing the child. And very important is if the child is already on anti-epileptic drugs. So what should we'll be asking, any missed doses are there, diarrhea, vomiting, fever is there, or co-medication if they are doing any medications they are giving, or any underdosages. So why we'll be asking all this, why this is important, I will be telling you in the next slide, which is so also with history, examination is very important, which can give you major clues for your management part. So microcephaly or presence of macrocephaly, level of consciousness and frequent assessment. So you have to keep assessing the child. So there is some like assessment means like any focal deficits is developing on the side of the seizure activity, or any injury marks, or anything which can give you clue, any bleeding from any side. Or there you should always, if you are working in a trauma setting, so always detect, you palpate head for any hematoma or skull fractures. Eye examination is very important, pupil, gaze and fundus, which gives major clues. And neurocutaneous syndrome, always either parents will give history or you may notice them while examining. And thorough neurological examination. And investigations I will be discussing later. So that is, there are some investigations which you have to do immediately, and then for planning the management part in detail. So these are additional investigations which you do on case-to-case basis. So coming to our case scenario, which we have started with a 2-year boy, fever for 6 days, and he came to casualty, and now we have classified this illness as acute febrile encephalopathy with status epilepticus, and child received a dose of lorazepam. So first drug we usually give is benzodiazepine. It can be lorazepam, it can be diazepam, midazolam. I will be discussing which drug to use and which has a better efficacy. We'll be discussing this in detail. So we have given a dose of lorazepam to this child, and all this early investigations like RBS was 180, malaria test was negative, serum sodium was at 135, and ionized calcium was normal. And we have already started this drug this child on ceftriaxone, vancomycin, acyclovir, and anti-razoricin measures. So coming to the first definition in the management, so early status epilepticus, so initial 5 minutes, 5 minutes when the child came conversing to you, you classify them as status epilepticus, and the initial 5 minutes is early status epilepticus. The treatment of early status epilepticus relies on the use of benzodiazepines. So there is a lot of evidence there's a lot of evidence for the recommendation of benzodiazepines for termination of seizures initially. Which benzodiazepine to use? So we'll be discussing that. So how does this benzodiazepines work? Enhancing the inhibitory neurotransmission through increasing GABA A receptors with subsequent neuronal hyperpolarization. So benzodiazepine which can be used as are lorazepam, diazepam, midazolam, and clonazepam. So this is a RCT which clearly try to give answer to like which benzodiazepine we should use. So what it concludes is there is no evidence to strongly support the preferential use of IV lorazepam as first line treatment of convulsive status epilepticus over IV diazepam. So if that is not available, IV lorazepam, you can use IV diazepam and you can have similar results. Only problem is that duration efficacy is same, but the duration of action is the better for lorazepam. So this there are two societies, International League Against Epilepsy and American Epilepsy Society. So they try to give some evidence, both of them individually. So lorazepam, diazepam, clonazepam, and phenobarbital. So they have used all these drugs in the termination of seizures. And what American Epilepsy Society recommends is intramuscular midazolam or IV lorazepam or intravenous diazepam. You can use any of these three drugs, and for all these three drugs, level A recommendation, they recommend a level A recommendation. So intramuscular midazolam, IV lorazepam, or IV diazepam. Anything, whatever is available, but preferably lorazepam, which has a long action. So action lasts long. So around 6 hours, it has to, what action is there. So, and the diazepam problem is diazepam midazolam. There is short action. So again, you have to give in some time. If none of these three options are available, choose any of the following. So if you don't have these three, intramuscular midazolam, intravenous lorazepam, intravenous diazepam, you can choose intravenous phenobarbital, rectal diazepam, and intranasal midazolam. So definitely these three, intravenous phenobarbital, rectal diazepam, and intranasal midazolam, are inferior to these three, intramuscular midazolam, intravenous lorazepam, and intravenous diazepam. So coming to these drugs in detail, so what you should know, what you should remember is their ceiling doses. So doses, everybody knows that lorazepam 0.1, diazepam 0.2, and midazolam around 0.2 to 0.3. But the ceiling dose you should be knowing, because a child with 50 kg lorazepam dose comes by this formula as 5 mg, but ceiling dose of lorazepam is 4 mg. So always remember the ceiling doses of these drugs: lorazepam 4 mg, diazepam 10 mg, and midazolam if the child is up to 40 kg 5 mg, and if the child is above 40 kg 10 mg. So there is a question now. So why we use only 2 doses of benzodiazepines and then we move further to any of the first line drugs like phenytoin, valproate, levetiracetam? Why if it is so efficacious, if this lorazepam and diazepam are so efficacious, we are using them as first line. Why we are not using them for third time, fourth time, fifth time? So one answer everybody gives is the respiratory depression part. Okay, that is correct, in partially correct. And what is the actual mechanism why it is happening? So I will try to make you understand by this figure. So just focus on the red dots in presynaptic terminus. These red dots represent GABA neurotransmitter, and these white dots represent glutamate. Okay, red dots GABA and white dots, white circles are glutamate. And the postsynaptic terminal, what you can see is these white triangles is glutamate receptor, and these blue receptors are GABA receptors. So what happens is, as the seizure continues, so before status starts or seizure starts or initial part of seizure, this is the anatomy. So what happens after repeated seizures? This synaptic junction, what changes occurs are this GABA receptors, which is the blue one, internalizes. So they go inside, and glutamate receptors, which is very few before the seizure, they come up. So they come up. So what happens is, so if even if you give any GABA mimetic drugs, any GABA mimetic drugs, if you are giving, there will be no effect because there are internalization of GABA receptor and there is no receptors left for the drug to act. So there will be a futile exercise of giving benzodiazepines again and again because there are no receptors left, GABA receptors, because everything is internalized after they say 10 to 12 minutes of seizures. So there is a proper research also, like first dose efficacy of for termination of seizure is 87%. So if you give lorazepam, 87% chances are there in the first dose the seizure will stop, and that declines to 70% in the second dose, and third dose of benzodiazepine terminates only 12% of seizures. So if seizure is not stopping by the two drugs doses of benzodiazepine, there are only 12% chance it will stop by the third dose of benzodiazepine, and unnecessary you will be causing respiratory depression also. So so this benzodiazepine you have given two dosages, and after that you have to move to the second stage, which is like after 15 to 20 minutes. So urgent therapy and second phase therapy. So you will be coming to the first, like these drugs: phenytoin, fosphenytoin, levetiracetam, phenobarbital, valproic acid. So there are different drugs available. You have to choose in between these drugs. There are no clear-cut answers which drug is better. There are two trials, one is Eclipse trial and one is ESET trial. They try to give some answers, but ESET trial, which has been concluded recently, where they have used fosphenytoin, valproate, and levetiracetam. And levetiracetam dosages they have taken as 60 mg per kg for loading. In that also they have concluded that almost they have same efficacy. So you can choose any of the three: fosphenytoin, valproate, and levetiracetam. But loading dose for levetiracetam, most of the trials they have taken either 40 or 60, not 20 mg per kg. So this phase, when they are refractory to benzodiazepine, so this will be called as established status epilepticus. So first was early status epilepticus, and this one is established status epilepticus, which has another name is benzodiazepine refractory status. So after giving two dosages, if the seizures continue, we come into the phase of established status epilepticus. So intravenous anti-epileptic drugs, which are used in this phase, I already discussed: phenytoin, fosphenytoin, valproate, levetiracetam, phenobarbital. Nowadays, people are also using lacosamide, which is a very good drug for focal status epilepticus. So only some randomized studies are there and no class 1 evidence, but I have already told that there are two recent trials, very big trials, concluded that almost same efficacy they have: fosphenytoin, valproate, and levetiracetam in 40 to 60 mg per kg. So again, what is the level of evidence? So one thing you should remember, as we go in the as the duration of seizure prolongs, like from early to benzodiazepine refractory and then the super refractory, the evidence for usage of drugs become very, very lean. So there is no clear-cut evidence which drug to use over another. So based whatever drugs you have and whatever the case scenarios you are facing, like if you are facing a child with febrile seizure history with status, you may prefer valproate in that scenario. And if you don't want to take this, some people are using nowadays levetiracetam. So no level A evidence is there for any of these drugs. Level U or level B evidence is there. So people answering all questions at the end of my talk. So you can use any of these drugs. So now coming to this very important question: phenytoin versus fosphenytoin, which drug to use? So what are the major differences? So phenytoin has a limitation. If you don't have normal saline, you cannot dilute phenytoin. So if you are having any glucose containing fluid only, so there is a limitation. You have to avoid phenytoin and you have to give some other drug. Fosphenytoin, you can give you can dilute in the any diluent available, and infusion rate you have to be very careful with phenytoin, which is less than 1 mg per kg per minute, and you can infuse phenytoin 3 times more rapidly than phenytoin. And there is a risk of hypotension and cardiac arrhythmia, which is also there with phenytoin, but there is a decreased risk, and decreased risk is there. Okay, so you may understand by this slide, okay, phenytoin is better. We can infuse it. Infusion rate is also faster, and there are less side effects. So side effect thing is there, definitely it's less. But what you should understand is phenytoin is a prodrug. So onset of action of the both drugs is almost same. So phenytoin you infuse slowly, but it acts as start acting as soon as it goes in body. But phenytoin has to convert in phenytoin in the body, and then only it can act. So almost it has similar kind of onset of action. So I told you in the slide that when we are asking history and the child is having any history of seizures or he was on any antiepileptic drugs, why it is important. So this is a very important slide, which you all should remember. So if a child is already on phenytoin of less than 6, phenobarbital of less than 5, valproate of less than 30, levetiracetam less than 30, these are the four most commonly drugs which our children are taking. So if they are on these dosages less than 30 for valproate and levetiracetam, and phenobarbital less than 5 and phenytoin less than 6, you can give a half loading dose again for termination of that status epilepticus. If they are already on more dosages like phenytoin, they are taking 8 mg per kg, phenobarbital they are taking 8 mg per kg, or valproate they are taking 60 mg per kg per day, levetiracetam they are taking 60 mg per kg per day. So there is no point of loading with the same drugs again. Even mini loading will not work, because whatever levels you want to achieve with loading or mini loading is already, you can presume they are already there. So you are just making your drug with like you're just giving drug with no use expected. So it's better to load with the other drug. So our child continued to seize intermittently with no gain of consciousness in between the episodes. So coming back to our case scenario, so after even we have given all these drugs, we have given first 2 doses of benzodiazepines, and then we have given uh, phenytoin and even levetiracetam. So we'll see what we have given till now. So child received second dose of lorazepam, phenytoin loading at 20. So in 10 minutes we have given phenytoin loading also after second dose of lorazepam, and child continued to convulse. We have given phenytoin mini loading followed by valproate loading at 30 minutes, but seizure continues. So we have given another drug. So I will discuss why we are giving so many drugs where only 2 loadings are recommended. So this is called time bind, which will be dealing in one slide. So levetiracetam loading also we have given. So once they are refractory to 2 doses of benzodiazepine and loading of any first line drug loading dose, and they continue to seize or an altered sensorium, this is called refractory status epilepticus. So there are 3-4 terminologies till now. One is early status epilepticus, second is established status epilepticus, or benzodiazepine refractory status epilepticus. This is refractory status epilepticus when they are refractory to first line drug also, any first line drug. So refractory status epilepticus, how we define it? Defined as the persistent seizure activity after initiation of first line and 1 second line AED, mostly phenytoin, valproate, levetiracetam, or phenobarbital. And some researchers also try to define this as with duration of seizures, duration of status epilepticus. So if they say if it is more than 60 minutes, you can label that as refractory status epilepticus. So refractory status epilepticus, some general principles. So it should ideally, preferably, it should be managed in ICU setting. So if you don't know the etiology by any history or examination is not giving any clue, child is seizuring, coming in status to you first time, you don't know the anything developmentally, you don't know anything, what is the developmental status, any clue. So it is preferred to you can give pyridoxine if child is less than 2 years, and treatment options are additional urgent control drugs or second line drugs or progress to pharmacological coma. So in this phase, so whatever drugs I have shown you here, so after first line phenytoin loading, whatever we were using like phenytoin mini loading, valproate loading, levetiracetam loading, this come in the management of refractory status epilepticus. Another option here is straight away is to progress to pharmacological coma. But what is the risk is bradycardia, apnea, hypothermia, and this thing happens when you induce pharmacological coma. That is why we should ideally manage these children in ICU setting. So coming to time buying or waiting for ICU. So if you don't have ventilatory facility or you are hesitant, okay, like there is some hesitation, you don't want to intubate or don't want to ventilate, or there are some constraints, you cannot do that. So but seizures, you have to try something. So this is called time buying measure. So what you can do is additional urgent control anti-seizure medications which you have not used, like any second line drug you have not used, phenytoin, valproate, levetiracetam, phenobarbital, you can again load with any of these. If they have not been tried, if the seizures seem to be fragmenting and becoming less frequent, or if the patient needs to be transferred or stabilized prior to the administration of continuous infusion. So you want to stabilize the child and you don't want to uh, induce coma in your setting, and you want to transfer, you want that after going to ICU, only I will start coma. So till then you have to do something, and what you can do is you can load with other available second line drugs. Other drugs which are available nowadays for loading, this kind of loading is topiramate. So topiramate has an advantage if the child does not have any cannula or there is some problem. You can give oral loading also. So oral loading also means you can have oral loading option only because there is no IV loading for topiramate. So you can give oral loading. Okay, and then lacosamide, which we have already discussed, which is a very good drug for, which is upcoming drug, very good drug for focal status epilepticus. It works wonders nowadays, especially for focal status epilepticus. So refractory status epilepticus, as I told you initially, also in between, also there as the duration of status prolongs, level of evidence for therapy decreases. So there is no clear evidence to guide therapy in this phase. Whatever available, you can start. And drugs commonly used for induction of coma are midazolam infusion, propofol, ketamine, thiopentone, and pentobarbital. Any of the things you can choose. Preferably, in our settings, we use midazolam infusion very commonly. Most of you also must be using the same thing. And thiopentone and pentobarbital should be used in ICU setting only. So, coming to pharmacological coma, this is also a terminology which you all should know in management of status epilepticus. So, for whenever you are inducing pharmacological coma, arrange admission to PICO if possible with intubation. Invasive BP and CET monitoring is recommended, and continuous EEG is needed. So, EEG, why EEG is needed? So, we need to uh, um, see the whatever we want to achieve. So because you are inducing coma, the child will stop seizuring, but actual seizures got stopped, or we have achieved our burst suppression pattern which we want to achieve, which we can only determine by seeing EEG activity. So measures to reduce ICP, monitor, and this type of things are desired. Options available, common options are benzodiazepine infusion, barbiturate infusion, and anesthetic agents. So they typically pharmacological coma is continued for 24 hours after seizure control. So if you achieve seizure control, which you want to achieve, and EEG goal of burst suppression before tapering. So at least 24 hours you should wait after stopping of seizures and EEG goal of burst suppression has achieved. So not like if the seizures are stopped and EEG you have seen burst suppression, so immediately you will not stop. You will wait for 24 hours, then you start decreasing. If seizures recurs on a reduced dose of medication, coma can be restarted and for an additional 24 hours. The recurrence of seizures on discontinuation of pharmacological coma is usually a grave sign. So again, evidence, we are in search of evidence for these drugs. So any of the things you can use, again, the evidence is very grim. So level U recommendation, which is based on some expert opinions, and anything you can use. And all the drugs which you should remember is needs to be started with preferably with EEG monitoring, because the burst separation pattern, which is one of the outcomes which we want to achieve, if you can only see in EEG. So there are some upcoming drugs for this, like midazolam, thiopentone, pentobarbital, and propofol are commonly used. Nowadays, we are also using ketamine, which is an NMD antagonist, and it has some neuroprotective effects. So nowadays, we are also using ketamine infusion, especially. There was a concern previously that it causes raised ICP, but nowadays we have denied this fact by some very good research, and we are using it, and it works very well in certain cases. So high dose phenobarbital is another option where so many centers use it. AIIMS New Delhi use it commonly, but like many centers are unaware about this. But it also works in because anyway we have to use some drugs, and high dose phenobarbital is an option where side effects are minimum and you can achieve burst suppression by just increasing dose every 30 minutes till 80 mg per kg. You go till 80 mg per kg and you achieve burst suppression. And finally, these inhaled anesthetics, isoflurane and desflurane are commonly used, and we don't use sevoflurane. Remember this as epileptogenic potential. This is a very rare scenario. Using of anesthetic usually happens in when anesthesia people are managing pediatric ICUs. So usually this type of scenarios doesn't happen. We achieve seizure control by phenobarbital coma, thiopentone coma, or any high dose phenobarbital coma. Many options are there, but rarely we go towards this isoflurane and desflurane. So coming to super refractory status epilepticus. So even after all this inducing coma and seizures are not stopping. So this scenario, or seizure has recurred, like seizure has recurred after stopping the coma. So how they define super refractory status epilepticus is continuous or recurrent seizures lasting 24 hours or more following initiation of anesthetic medications, including cases in which seizure control is attained after induction of anesthetic drugs, but recurs on weaning the patient of the anesthetic agent. So try to understand this definition. So either there is continuous seizures or recurrent seizures lasting 24 hours or more following initiation. So after you start anesthetic medications, seizures are either they are coming continuously or they are recurring in between. So if this type of scenario is there, or it also include cases in which seizure control is attained after induction of anesthetic drugs, but recurs on weaning the patient of the anesthetic agent. So all these three scenarios, so either continuous seizures or recurrent seizures lasting 24 hours, or if you are tapering the anesthetic agent, again seizure start coming. All these three scenarios comes into super refractory status epilepticus. So when we talk about super refractory status epilepticus, our goals of treatment changes here. First thing, we want to stop seizure here also, but now till now we are certain already lot of damage has been done, and we want to give neuroprotection primarily here. We also know here that if we don't identify cause and don't treat it, it is unlikely the seizure will stop. That is why from in the beginning I told that history and examination is very important part when you are managing a child with status from the beginning itself. So if you get some clue, you can start some specific treatments. Like if a child with pyridoxine dependent seizures, if you know by history or examination, like pyridoxine deficiency children can have large head, and the large head developmental delay can be there. certain IEMs you can get clue, certain epilepsy syndromes you can get clue by history. So history and examination is very important. So 62% of pediatric refractory status epilepticus occurs due to CNS infections, which is the most common scenario in our setting. So coming to management part of super refractory status epilepticus is, so till now we have used all the drugs which you must be knowing. So now we have to use some other drugs which you don't commonly use in the management of status epilepticus. So one such drug is magnesium. So we start sometimes magnesium infusion, which acts by NMDA receptor stabilization. So NMDA is a excitatory receptor. You want to stabilize that excitatory receptor. So you give this magnesium infusion. It works sometimes. Okay, on just case series are available. Very few patients, one or two patients. Specifically, it has worked in refractory status epilepticus due to POLG mutation, which is a mitochondrial disorder. Immunotherapy. So as we are seeing, many children have autoimmune disorders nowadays. NMDA is in fashion, and certain other drugs, other disorders like anti-GAD receptor encephalitis, Hashimoto's encephalitis. So autoimmune epilepsy is also a major chunk. Researchers say that fires and NORS has some autoimmune basis. So seizures where you don't come to a conclusion of any specific cause. You can choose immunotherapy, and immunotherapy what you give is methylprednisolone or IVIG for of 2 gram per kg over 5 days. Other things which you can use are plasma exchange. Nowadays, people are also using rituximab and interleukin-1 inhibitors. And other drugs, other therapy which we try in super refractory status epilepticus is ketogenic diet. So certain etiologies respond only to ketogenic diet, specifically GLUT1 deficiency and PDH deficiency if the child has underlying and he has presented his status. If you start ketogenic diet, the child will respond wonderfully. But in any scenario, it is advisable that you can start ketogenic diet. So coming to this simple chart, if you for super refractory status epilepticus management, general anesthesia you have given, no cause identified, give IV magnesium and IV pyridoxine in children less than 2 years. If cause identified, treat cause if possible, and if seizures continues after IV magnesium and IV pyridoxine, consider steroid, IVIG or plaques. And if you have some lesion like a focal lesion in brain, some cortical dysplasia that is causing seizure, and you've localized that, okay, this from here only discharges are coming, and already you know that this child has focal cortical dysplasia and his focal status, consider neurosurgery as early as possible and removal of the lesion is advised. Other options which are available are consider hypothermia, which is therapeutic hypothermia, where you achieve the desired temperature of 32 to 34 degree. Consider ketogenic diet, and there are certain theoretical procedures which has been given, which we have never tried, but they have been mentioned in the textbooks, like electroconvulsive therapy, CSF drainage, and other rare therapies. So this is the table which is which list all the therapies which you can try in super refractory status epilepticus: magnesium, pyridoxine, hypothermia, vagal nerve stimulation, ketogenic diet, electroconvulsive therapy, steroids, immunoglobulins. So what are the predictors of outcome? So predictors of bad outcome in status epilepticus is age. So younger children are at high risk. A simple reason is developing brain. If you cause any injury, there will be poor prognosis. Etiology: acute symptomatic and progressive encephalopathies have worse outcome. Acute symptomatic and progressive encephalopathy. So if any child who is already in case of epilepsy, and which is a static kind of epilepsy, like a cerebral palsy child, you must have heard many children with your CP children, they will tell that my child had breakthrough seizures at home, and when you ask how much duration it lasts, you may remember, they may tell sometimes bizarre durations like 1 hour, 2 hour, and then you will wonder, oh, nothing happened to child. The child is same as before. So that because prognosis is not bad when the seizures are remote symptomatic. So they are presence like they are the good prognosticating markers. So acute symptomatic and progressive encephalopathies have worse outcome. Mortality in acute symptomatic seizures increases drastically. Overall mortality of any status epilepticus is 3 to 7%, but in acute symptomatic cases, it is 12 to 16%. And most reason for acute symptomatic seizures is that body is not used to this mechanism. This, again, sudden events can happen, like even electrocardiographic complications, ECG complications can happen in acute symptomatic seizures. If seizures are happening for the first time in any acute insult. Duration of status epilepticus, as we all know, this is the most important factor which we can also change. This is the only thing actually we can change in in the list of prognostic markers, because age, etiology, and mortality, this we cannot change. But duration of status epilepticus, definitely we can try to reduce the, this duration. So as the duration prolongs, definitely the prognosis becomes grim. So indications of EEG in the management of status epilepticus. So if a child is having persistently altered mental status after convulsive status epilepticus, so seizures have stopped, convulsion part has stopped, child is not seizuring but continue to have persistent altered mental status, which you are not able to explain by the duration of seizure. So you need an EEG. That this is possible that child may have gone in non-convulsive status now. So you want to know that. Second thing is fluctuating or unexplained alteration in mental state. Again, so he is the sensorium. Sometimes you, when you see the child, you will find them in a stupor, and sometimes suddenly you will say he's in coma or vegetative state, he's not responding. Then you need to do an EEG to find any underlying EEG abnormalities or encephalopathic pattern. Pharmacological coma, whenever you are giving, it is mandatory to do an EEG. It's desired. It is always desired, because you, one of the outcome which you want to achieve with by pharmacological coma is burst suppression pattern in EEG. And paroxysmal events which are suspected to be seizures in the management, when you are, so if when you have induced pharmacological coma, many movements happen in the child, say like any myoclonus happens sometimes due to benzodiazepines. So you may have doubts sometimes, okay, these movements are seizures or not. Plus some oculoclonic movements, some gaze deviations. You are not sure. You want to confirm. You need an EEG. So coming to this paper, which has been published in Neurology in Green Journal. So time from convulsive status epilepticus onset to anticonvulsant administration in children. They try to study this. So time from onset of convulsive status epilepticus onset to anticonvulsant administration, and what they have found is the time elapsed from status epilepticus onset to AED administration, escalation from one class of AEDs to another is delayed, both in the pre-hospital and in-hospital settings. So what they saw is 40 patients did not receive any AED before hospital arrival, even in US. So just imagine in India, so we cannot expect that we will be doing much better. So that is why here comes the role of your discharge advice for any child with seizure. So you should advise them about midazolam spray and recovery position. Any child with seizure, any first episode or any known case of epilepsy in past, any risk factors for epilepsy, you should always prescribe midazolam spray, and how you should mention whenever seizure occurs more than 3 to 5 minutes, you should use. So even in US, 40 patients did not receive any AED before hospital arrival. So again, I will be summarizing this in a I try to simplify whatever we have learned. So there are 4 stages: early phase, established status, refractory status, super refractory status. Okay, so early phase is when the child came to casualty, and you are you are giving benzodiazepines. So this happens in first 5 to 10 minutes. And when it is refractory to benzodiazepine, this is called established status epilepticus or benzodiazepine refractory status epilepticus. This will be finished. This stage will be finished by 10 to 30 minutes. And refractory status epilepticus, which when it is refractory to 2 doses of benzodiazepine and and one second line drug, any of the second line drug. It can be phenytoin, it can be fosfenitoin, it can be levetiracetam, valproate. Okay, and finally, uh, you in this stage you will start pharmacological coma, and even after pharmacological coma using anesthetic agent, if the seizures continues, you will be dealing with super refractory status epilepticus that continues despite treatment with anesthetics more than 24 hours. So again, for level of evidence and the drugs which we use is, so again, stage-wise division is there. So in the first stage, you stabilize the patient, you do examination, you do some testing, whichever is available in the case-to-case basis. And in early status epilepticus, you use pre-hospital setting diazepam, midazolam, like oral or intranasal or intramuscular. Hospital setting, you any of the benzodiazepine in IV form. And in established status epilepticus, valproate, phenytoin, fosfenitoin, levetiracetam, phenobarbital, any of the drug which you have. And refractory status epilepticus, uh, any of the infusions, midazolam, thiopentone, phenobarbital, or any of anesthetic agents. So if even after anesthetic agents it doesn't stop, it goes in the super refractory status epilepticus. And I have mentioned immunotherapy, ketogenic diet, magnesium, these drugs you can try. So what will be the take-home message of this thing is, so what you should remember is status epilepticus is an emergency. You should be thinking about precipitating factors continuously while managing this child, because eventually you may need what is the etiology of this status epilepticus. Evaluate and treat cause in super refractory. So you need to find out the cause, and swift escalation of AEDs without any delay is the cornerstone of the management. And never even forget to prescribe midazolam nasal spray in a child with epilepsy. So this is my talk. So what 5 points which I want to focus on by this status management. So first and foremost is the definitions you should remember clearly. So there is the concept of time point T1 and time point T2, which differs for every type of seizure. For generalized seizure, it is 5 minutes time point T1, and T2 it is 30 minutes. Then for focal, it is 15 minutes, and this is 60 minutes for T2 is 60 minutes. So every seizure type, there are different time durations, and then certain definitions which you should remember: early status epilepticus, benzodiazepine refractory, refractory status epilepticus, and super refractory status epilepticus. What is pharmacological coma, and why you give only 2 doses of benzodiazepine, which is very important, you should remember. And ceiling doses of all the drugs, like even not only benzodiazepines, you should also be remembering ceiling doses of phenytoin, valproate, levetiracetam. Like phenytoin ceiling dose is 800 mg. For a 50 kg child, you don't load 1000 mg. Maximum dose which we use in pediatrics is 800 mg. Okay, so I will be looking at your question and answers, and I will try to. Okay.
Thank you, Lokesh. Thank you very much. The talk was extremely good. Please try
Rohit
to
has
answer
asked
the questions.
how to differentiate post-ictal altered sensorium versus non-convulsive status. Okay, so I have told that one thing is, uh, like if a child had status and duration is like just for 30 minutes and you have stopped the seizures, and a fair duration has been lapsed after the management, like you have not given any sedative drugs like midazolam infusion or something, the child should regain sensorium within 6 hours, 8 hours, not more than that. But if child continues to be in altered sensorium or maybe worsening, there is worsening in sensorium, you should be thinking if EEG is there, it is always advisable. If EEG is not there, you should treat it as non-convulsive status epilepticus. So again, Rohit has asked, any practical implications of T1 and T2 in practical seizure management? So actually speaking, no. So any child coming to came to you seizuring, you start management as status epilepticus, and you will not try to fit the child in the definition with T1 and T2. But you actually know, okay, the duration is 60 minutes. So definitely some neuronal injury has happened in the case of generalized status. And if 2 hours duration is there in focal status, you may presume there may be some long-term neuronal injury. So this type of, at least this type of things you can get an idea. Then again, so do you recommend to wait for 10 minutes in focal status? So again, so see, a child, so one definition is if any child coming to you with seizure. So any child, so you will not wait in hospital. So you will not document 10 minutes and start managing, obviously. But in hospital, if it is happening and the child is not having any case, any chances of status, like any chances of any evidence of altered sensorium, you can wait. But the child is having altered sensorium, and even if 1 minute, 2 minutes, definitely you will manage it. You will not wait for 10 minutes. Why absence status gets precipitated with sodium channel blocker? So why it happens? So like what happens is sodium channel blockers, what does they do? That they act on the channels which they actually sodium channels, when they are open, they are preventive for the mechanism which is responsible for absence seizures. So when you block them, so they act differently, and they precipitate absence status actually. So that is a protective phenomena by presence of sodium channel in absence seizures. So, and you are blocking them. Okay, the one person has asked, when the child is on 2 AEDs and presents with status, which is the first drug that should be loaded? So, okay, as I told you, depending on the dosages. So, 2 AEDs, what is the dosage they are on? Like if phenytoin is, they are giving on 8 mg per kg per day, and another drug which is levetiracetam, they are giving in 60 mg per kg per day. So there is no point in loading with both the drugs. So you can choose alternate drug, valproate or phenobarbital. If they are giving levetiracetam at 20 mg per kg per day maintenance, or phenytoin at 5 mg per kg per day maintenance, you can load with phenytoin half the loading dose, and levetiracetam also half the loading dose. So which I have explained in one slide. So I hope I am clear here. Role of midazolam spray in status, one person has asked. So okay, if you don't have any IV line and you don't have any injection preparation available, and if only spray is available with you in your OPD setting, you can always, so whatever is available for status management, you don't wait for any alternate. So if you know that you cannot achieve IV line here, I know you cannot secure IV line, you will not wait for this only, okay, I will give only IV lorazepam or IV midazolam. You can, if midazolam spray is there, this will also work. So this somewhat inferior, but definitely it will work. It is better than nothing, if you give nothing. So one person has asked, do you suggest raised ICP management in all cases presenting with status? So depends on the case to case scenario. In some children, you clearly see there are signs of raised ICP while the child is having seizures. So they are having, with seizures, what happens in early phase? they will be having sympathetic stimulation like tachycardia, hypertension in initial phase, 30 minutes, as I explained in one slide. In 10 minutes, 15 minutes only, they are having like bradycardia, posturing in between. And if you see any of signs of the raised ICP, you start management. Otherwise, if you have no clinical signs of raised ICP, you don't presume raised ICP and start management of raised ICP in status epilepticus. There is no such recommendation. So again, is there no role of intravenous midazolam for treating status epilepticus? Some centers use IV midazolam for most cases. So I have told any benzodiazepines you can use, whichever is available. Obviously, the best advantage for with lorazepam is it has a long duration of action. So it lasts in the body for almost 6 hours. So you don't have to repeat again and again dosages. So that is the one advantage. And another advantage is it is that it causes less respiratory depression. Midazolam and diazepam causes more respiratory depression. But you can anyway use if you don't have lorazepam. Okay, so midazolam you can use. So again, this question has been asked multiple times. So midazolam definitely you can use if you don't have lorazepam with you. IV midazolam can always be used. Maintenance anti-epileptic drugs after aborting status with multiple AEDs. Okay, so if you have used 4 anti-epileptic drugs in stopping that particular status, you want, I suppose you want to ask how many drugs you start as maintenance. Obviously all in starting, and once 72 hours has lapsed, seizure free period, 72 hours gone, child is seizure free, child has, shows improvement in sensorium. One by one, in hospital also you can start decreasing the dosages. So last drug which you have added, you will stop that drug last. Okay, so we'll be having one or two more questions. So Muthu has asked, suppose the child received 2 doses of benzodiazepine and phenytoin. Do we go with another AED like valproate or directly start midazolam infusion? So as I have told, if you have the ICU facility and you don't have any hesitation of intubating, preparing for intubation, you can start straight away. You can go for midazolam infusion. You don't have to wait for loading with another second line drug. It is not recommended. If you already use 2 doses of benzodiazepines and you have given one second line drug at appropriate doses, you can straight away go for midazolam infusion. So so one person has asked what is the maximum dose of phenytoin for loading in status. So I've already answered it, 800 milligram for pediatric patients. Okay, so what is the evidence for loading the drug that a child is already on when they are on dosages below certain levels as mentioned by you in one of the slides? Then so they see evidence is there. So if there what I think you want to know that, like, from where I have quoted that slide. Okay, so there it is clearly mentioned that if the child is on certain level of drugs, like dosages of drugs like less than 30 for like valproate and levetiracetam, So still you can try mini loading of that drug, because you may presume that the child has thrown this seizure because of decrease in the level of the same drug, which was stopping the seizure in the child till now. So you can presume that thinking, and you can mini load with the drug, and then only you can choose the alternate drug. One person has asked approach of febrile status epilepticus. So this is, if you don't know febrile or febrile, you manage this as this same protocol. If you know that clear cut, okay, this child has a history of febrile seizure, the second line drug which you are using is preferably valproate, not phenytoin. If you don't have valproate, you will not wait. Okay, I cannot load with phenytoin. You can load with phenytoin in status epilepticus presenting with fever, history of febrile seizures, because the priority is to stop seizures there. Okay, so some last questions. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lokesh, for such an extensive and a very beautifully covered lecture. We are very grateful to you on behalf of Association of Child Neurology. We thank all residents. We thank all residents who have joined, and hope you all enjoyed this session and you learned a lot. I know there are a lot of questions which remain unanswered, but it's okay. Time is a limitation always. Hope you all enjoyed the session. Good night, all of you. And thank you once again, Dr. Lokesh. Thank you.